New Orleans, a city of mystery, a city that 1 million people proudly call home, at least the ones above ground, because New Orleans is also home to many beings that can't find their way back. Watch as our group of paranormal investigators attempt to discover these lost souls. Join us as we explore New Orleans, the most haunted city in America.
My name's Ken ARRINGTON. I'm one of the lead investigators here at the Haunted Mortuary on the paranormal research team. Been affiliated with this property since, August of 2007. The mortuary is located about 2 miles outside of the French Quarter, right on the cemetery streetcar line. In fact, we're pretty much the last stop on the streetcar line to the Cities of the Dead. The building was originally built in 1872. It was built as a family home. It was not built as a mortuary. A woman named Mary Slattery built the home for her and her husband and her children. They lived here till 1905. 1905, Mary Slattery and her daughter passed away, we believe, of yellow fever. The property has gone through a couple of owners. The primary occupant of the building, of course, was P.J. McMahon & Sons Funeral Home Company, which operated a funeral home here for over 80 years. They wanted to turn it into a grand funeral home. It was the first funeral home in Louisiana that offered motorized hearses. Not only that, they actually had apartments that people could stay at upstairs when they would come into town. They could run up to 6 to 7 funerals at one time. It's believed that prior to 1985, there were over 20,000 funerals performed here. There was an embalming room on premises. There's an autopsy room on premises as well. Crematorium, cold storage, casket sales, casket storage, anything that you could think of dealing with the funeral and dealing with taking care of the bereaved. This place, saw to that, and it stayed open until 2003. And eventually, it was purchased to be a day spa, and then they gutted the interior. There was nothing that remained, and they were getting ready to start rebuilding it, and then Katrina came. And this building didn't take a lot of damage during Katrina. It took about 6 inches of water in the basement, but no one wanted to buy a big scary old funeral home, that was empty, didn't have anything in it. So it sat alone and abandoned for a couple of years until Jeff Bourne, the current owner, purchased the property in July of 2007 to turn it into the Mortuary Haunted House.
The one thing that happened to me, it's been a while, but about a year ago when I was sleeping in the building before we actually had the suites, and I was awakened to what sounded like screaming. And it was a low-pitched screaming, and as I woke up, I realized that it was a lot louder. And then I just turned around and looked I went all through the whole house looking for it, but I couldn't find anything.
Yeah, you hear just general noises in this building, and it's weird. You're in one room, and the room next to you, you just hear the noise, and there's other people in the building. You're assuming that somebody that's here working with you is in the next room, and you go into the next room waiting to see somebody that you're working with, and there's nobody in there. And that's really weird, because the second right before you go into the room, you hear like papers shuffling, or you can hear somebody walking, and you go in the room and there's nobody in the whole area, and you're like, wow, who was that?
Former employees who were here were working in the building, and they had seen and saw different things happen in the building, one of which was the noises that they heard, the dragging noise going up and down the stairwell. And at first they didn't really know what it was. They heard this dragging noise up and down the stairs, and they kept hearing this, so they kind of got afraid, and they started asking questions, and that's when they found out that they didn't have a stair. There were only stairs here when the building was originally open, so they had to bring the coffins up and down through the stairs. So they just figured out it was a residual haunting.
The building has tons of history, and it's had paranormal phenomena reported in the building for over 100 years. We've heard stories going back to 1905, 1920s, 1930s. Particularly in the 1930s, a story started about a ghostly woman in white who has been seen throughout the property. Sometimes she'll come up to people and ask, have they seen her husband? The ghost that we have given the name of Marie, or Mary, that is what she usually identifies herself by, has been seen throughout the building. Since the 1970s, there have been stories about a undertaker that worked here that actually died during a funeral. He was outside helping to load up a hearse and slipped on the concrete and struck his head on the pavement, and he passed away. Ever since then, people have said that they have seen a rather tall gentleman asking, "Are you here to see Mr. Anderson?" We've had numerous reports of this phenomena occurring. The embalming room is reportedly one of the more haunted rooms of the house, so we have more ghost stories that come out of the embalming room than anywhere else. Legend has it there's a mortician that is still there in the embalming room, still doing his work, so to speak, and he's not too happy with the way the room is decorated. But people have been seeing this guy since the 1960s. We hear his name is Samuel. Two of the main ghosts that are reported in the building are actually the ghosts of two small children. One is a boy, his name's rumored to be Daniel. The girl's name is rumored to be Agnes Elizabeth or Esther Elizabeth. They've been reported in the building for over 100 years.
I'm painting the wall and I look down before I move over, and there's a little boy that haunts here named Daniel, and he's standing there clear as day looking dead up at me as I'm painting. And we just both kind of stood there and looked at each other for a while, and then he just disappeared.
I stayed here myself at night and heard little footsteps running around where there's nothing else in the house. The children are very rambunctious. They've been known to play pranks. We have many EVPs of children whistling and talking. We've actually even had we have an EVP of you can actually hear a little girl arguing with her little brother. So it's kind of funny that in death, ghosts still argue with one another. They like to play pranks. They like to have fun. They're kids. We even have a doll collection here that people have donated dolls over the years to these two children. My wife, when she started working here, she didn't believe in ghosts at all. She was the most diehard skeptic, non-believer that I had ever met, and total opposite of me in a lot of ways in regards to ghosts and things like that. But now she actually believes more than I do, so to speak, some people's stories, because so many things have happened to her while she's here, and we've both witnessed statues move before in a room. We've seen them move back and forth, just like rock back and forth. We've seen that. We were building a wall downstairs going into what we call the crypt for the haunted house season. It was the middle of the day in the summer, and we both look up and we saw an old man standing in blue pajamas in a corner, and we both saw him at the same time. And I didn't believe what I was seeing, so I looked down and I looked back up, and he was still there. And I looked over at her, and she's just staring with her mouth open into the corner. And I said, "Do you see this?" She goes, "The guy standing in the corner in the blue pajamas." And I was like, "Yeah," and then he disappeared.
You know, and that's when we have the most activity. After we run the haunted house attraction through this building, and we have thousands of people going through this building at night, and the energy level is just so bumped in here, it's very active in here after. You know, they feed off that energy that the people leave going through this place. The best way to capture paranormal activity on a camera is to use actual film. I use 35mm film, and I use high-speed film with no flash. And the first year we was here for the haunted house attraction, we would do tours after the haunted house, and I'd follow the tour groups around and take pictures. And I'd take rolls and rolls of film. We got the pictures back. A friend of mine that was with me, he always wants to look at the pictures first, and he looked through them, and he's like, "Oh, you don't have nothing." So he hands me a stack of pictures, and I start looking through it, and like the second picture I come to is a picture of the front parlor by the grand staircase, and there's a little girl just standing there clear as day, and she just randomly showed up on the film, and I have the actual negative in the picture that she showed up in, and it's pretty amazing. But it's actual film. I think I have better luck with than digital. When we bring people in here, we don't say, "Well, there's a ghost of a woman that goes across this room," or "You can see small children playing." We don't tell people usually anything. We just tell them the building's haunted, and we let them have the experiences. And it's like we keep on getting the same thing over and over and over. Same names, everything.
Psychics will come in here, and I'm very much a skeptic about a lot of things, but we've had a lot of psychics come through here and say that we have a lot of transient ghosts due to our close proximity to the cemeteries. There are over 1 million people interred in the cemeteries around us within 1 square mile, and supposedly this is a stopping point, I guess you could say. It just blows my mind how these people who have never met one another report the exact same things, describe children the exact same way, describe a woman in white the exact same way. And it's quite an amazing journey it's been for the home in collecting these things and seeing these things. That's one reason we're glad you guys are here, so we get to share some of these stories.